I'm Aryeh Schwartz along with Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W, the Las Vegas Aces. What's their roster situation, and what situations are they facing this offseason? Let's dive in. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community, patreon.com/Winsidr. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see our staff's amazing writing content over at winsidr.com. Remember, download the episode makes our stats look better and allows us to continue doing this important work. You want to sponsor an episode or more of the Winsidr Show? Email us info@winsidr.com. All right, let's dive in. Another episode where we're talking about the free agent situation, the cap space, and just overall ideas of the direction that these teams might be focusing on or looking for, and trying to help the fans understand, I think that kind of rhymed, where these teams might be looking to make some moves and where they might look to not make moves. We're talking Las Vegas Aces roster situation and what they might be looking to do in this free agency period. Rachel Galligan, how you doing?
I'm good. It's Monday. Let's go.
Woo!
Another
Let's
week.
go. Okay. Well, let's talk about who's currently on roster for the Las Vegas Aces. One of the biggest names, a team that, and I spoke about this before, has to be considered a disappointment with the star power of their roster to not come away with the WNBA Finals championship over the past few seasons. But now this roster, very different than it's been over the past few years. And with new head coach Becky Hammon, and there's been reports of her being the GM. As of right now, this team does not have a GM. It sounds like, just based off of the reporting that I've seen and the press releases, it sounds like she's probably going to be the GM, but they don't want to announce that until, and this is all speculation that I'm blown out of thin air, but it sounds like Bill's the GM as of now until Becky can take over once the Spurs season is done. But enough about speculation, enough about all that. Let's speculate in a different way. Who's on this roster currently and where they could be looking to add positions? Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, Derica Hamby, Jackie Young, and Destiny Slocum are all the players who are currently signed contracts for this team. They have Asia Wilson as a restricted free agent and Jisoo Park as a reserved free agent. So let's talk about this a little bit, right? They have $724,000 in cap space. Now, realistically, we're talking about Asia Wilson's taking a chunk of that, right? No, the Las Vegas Aces, no one is stupid enough to say that Asia Wilson's not going to be on this team unless she demands a trade, which I would be shocked to see, right? You don't often see a cornerstone, the face of the franchise, demand a trade when the whole team's built around them in a place like Vegas, who have really, really invested wholeheartedly in this team. So now you're down to around $500K, right? Mm-hmm. And that's for up to 5 players, just based on the numbers. So, Rachel, looking at this roster, what are some things you'd like to see? I mean, I know. Should we talk about Liz first, right? Liz was on this roster the past few seasons. Everyone kept talking about the 1-2 punch of her and Asia Wilson, undefeatable. They're going to go big things. They're going to win championships. Honestly, I look at this team and I'm happy Liz. I'm assuming Liz is gone. I'm happy Liz is gone. I think they can have better success. But I think it comes down to role players. What's your thought when you look at this roster?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the biggest elephant in the room is Liz Cambage, and what direction does this franchise continue to go with it? It's hard for me to imagine, a team led by someone other than Bill Laimbeer in the connection that he had with Liz. And I just don't know, it just doesn't make sense. I feel like we tried it and it didn't quite work. And it's one of those things where do you cut those ties and continue and offer Asia Wilson the Supermax, which is very deserving, and continue to just kind of build your franchise around her and the core of some of these guards, these elite guards? I think that makes sense. I don't know that I see necessarily the dynamic of Cambage and Wilson being able to get it done. Like, we tried it, it wasn't working, and it kind of hindered both of their, I guess, potential and production in certain ways. I guess is the best way I can try to say it, which is crazy to me because for as dominant and imposing as Liz Cambage can be, I mean, but you just look at this roster as this puzzle, and you're trying to put it all together, and does it make sense? It doesn't not, and I just don't know if I see her fitting in with the Becky Hammond style play. I don't know. I honestly, I don't know, but I would not. And maybe this is just the hopeful. I don't even really know what the right word is, but I kind of want to see Angel go back to Atlanta. So I kind of don't want Vegas to bring her, or yeah, I don't want Vegas to bring Angel back either. And so I think that opens up some discussion of, again, role players and what are the pieces to this puzzle that take this team over to the the next phase. I mean, obviously Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, Derek Hamby, Jackie Young, Asia Wilson, assuming they get it done, they core her and bring her back. I'm looking and I'm thinking, even Jisoo Park, who's been playing extremely well. I think you need a little bit of an edge, like a mental toughness kind of edge to you, chip on your shoulder, in your guard play, in your wing play. And I would almost say, go get someone like a Sophie Cunningham. And the more I think about it, the more I love that. Because this is a team that kind of dwindles off in playoff time, right? Like, you kind of sit there and you said it yourself, like, it's been a disappointment. And that sounds so harsh for as dominant as this team can be, but they're at that point where it's like, you're either going to take the next step or it's just going to kind of like fizzle out in some ways. And I think you've got to make some aggressive changes to the roster and cutting some ties with some extremely talented players that just doesn't fit. So I would go get, Becky Hammond said she wanted to shoot more threes. Obviously Kelsey Plum, is going to be Kelsey Plum. She's playing phenomenal, but I would go get someone like a Sophie Cunningham, who brings a little bit of an edge to this team. And I think this team could use that. What do you think?
No, I completely agree. I like that. Hearing you bring up Angel, I would love for her to go back Atlanta, but on the other hand, I don't want her to go back because I do want her to win a ring before she goes. And I think if I'm Vegas, I'm putting full court press on Angel and Raquana to come back, and I'm looking at free agency and trying to find some sort of a big. And this is,
I would bring Raquana back too. I really like
I just think any team in the league would be stupid to not put in a call and try and bring in Raquana Williams. She's the microwave for a reason.
Well,
right?
And let's not forget, she took like next to nothing, to go to Las Vegas at that point. I'm not saying she'll be willing to do that again, but Vegas got her for cheap.
And any team, honestly, look at Raquana Williams. I know we talked about in our last episode or maybe it wasn't last episode, last time we did a grouping of episodes last week, about the Chicago Sky. That's a place where now, just talking about it, yeah, we talked about Angel McCautry. Maybe Raquana is going to be a little undersized to possibly replace a Diamond DeShields if Diamond's gone. Not going to have that defensive versatility. But heck, the way Raquana can jump, I've seen her block Sylvia fouls.
No, I agree. Raquana Williams should be sought after. I've always been a huge fan of Raquana Williams.
Now, she's not going to be in the first wave of, the big name signings of the Liz Cambages, the Stewies, the Jewel Lloyd, the John Paul Joneses.
But she can
make impact-wise.
For sure.
Exactly. And I agree with you. A Sophie Cunningham, this Aces team needs a player who is going to be left on an island to a degree, and it doesn't matter. That player who is just so embodied in themselves is going to throw some bows, play a little dirty. Honestly, I think that's something that this team has kind of missed. At the end of the day, I completely agree with you. Liz Cambage, you gotta open the door for her, thank her for her service. It's not a negative thing. It's just one of those situations where it just wasn't working.
Well, and I think selfishly, I would love to see Liz Cambage be that centerpiece. Like we saw it in Dallas in her last season there, where it was just throw it to Liz and get the hell out of the way. That's just not the dynamic here in Vegas, and it never was. And that's fine. But Liz Cambage is that type of player that you can throw it to her, 18 times a night, and she's going to go to work. And we haven't really had a chance to see that. So selfishly,
well, it's one of those situations where it's just like, I expect Asia Wilson to really step into it, because when you have so much support around you, there's less pressure on yourself. Now, pressure sometimes can be a bad thing, but for the greats, pressure is golden. Pressure is where you win the medals, where you win the rings. And I just think kind of freeing A'ja Wilson would allow her to do more. To yes, you still have Chelsea Gray, you still have Kelsey Plum and Dearica Hamby, and hopefully a variety of other players who can make big time shots. I mean, specifically, everyone talks about Chelsea Gray, but realistically, you want to feed it to A'ja and let A'ja cook and lead that team back when they're down in the playoffs, or lead that team to victory. And then, right, you need one last shot. That's where Chelsea Gray comes in. We've seen this throughout her career. Chelsea Gray, and I don't mean this in a negative way, Chelsea Gray has shown us what type of player she is, right? Throughout her whole career. You know, maybe she's one of those Diamond to Shields players where seeing that spark of greatness got us media, got us fans to sit here and have higher expectations than what were realistic. Chelsea Gray, for years in LA, we kept waiting for her to take over that team. And then I think it became abundantly clear she wasn't the type of player who's going to take over the team, right? But I think what we have seen is from A'ja Wilson, she can be that player, and they need to just hand the reins to her. Enough of her, splitting time with these other players, and enough of Dearica Hamby coming off the bench. Let's start her. Now let's look at other players to come in and fill those bench positions for this Aces team. I mean, realistically, contract-wise, you're pretty tied down with Hamby making close to 150, Plum 180, Chelsea Gray 190 in the 190s, and then A'ja making, the 200. So it's going to be a tricky situation to bring in a few more players, but I can guarantee you, and we've seen this before, there's going to be multiple players who are willing to go to Vegas for a slightly lower contract to make a championship run. And I think, this team is not going to be in the discussion for favorites going into the season. I think if cards play themselves out like we expect them to so far this year, you're going to talk about Chicago running it back. You're going to talk about Connecticut being the favorites, and then a few other teams, obviously Seattle, if they bring back Stewie, Lloyd, and Sue, is going to be in that discussion. We'll get to that later.
I think Vegas is in the discussion. They're in that top 3-4. They have to be. But that's a big one. Vegas, I mean, obviously there's you just hired Becky Hammon. So what direction does this team look like under her era is going to be really fascinating. And I do think it's going to get blown up in some way. And so it's kind of hard to say, like, what direction does this team go? There's a lot of free agents and a lot of movement that we're going to see the Aces kind of, it's going to happen. But I'm with you. I mean, I would secure Raquana Williams if at all possible. And I would make sure I core A'ja Wilson. I'm bringing back Jisoo Park and Angel. I mean, I think I'm open now after I want Angel to win a ring. So if you can find a way, for that to work out contractually, then sure, great. But I definitely think, and then at that point, I think you got to get a little bit more depth at the guard spot, the wing spot. Just someone that brings a little bit of a different mentality. And for me,
I agree.
I like
no,
that.
and
yeah.
But ahead. Rachel, this is what I'll say, because while I agree they'll probably be a top 4 team in preseason polls, I'm just gonna say this because, like, realistically, I don't know necessarily if they have the cap space to make a big splash. So unless somebody is taking a price cut to go there, I mean, we're talking about your starting 5 of Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum. I mean, I'll say your starting 6, fine. Or, you know what? No, I'll just say starting 5, even though I know this isn't realistically the starting 5. But Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, Dearica Hamby, Jackie Young, and A'ja Wilson. Is that a championship team in your mind, not knowing who the bench players are?
Possibly, yeah, of course.
All right, cop out, Rachel.
I mean, why not? 100%. I think so.
All right, I agree that I like where this team is, and I can see some success. In my mind, they're a little top heavy, and they need to get some more bigs in there. They need to get some more wings, like you're talking about, and they need that tougher mentality. We'll see where it goes. Any final thoughts on Las Vegas Aces before we wrap it up this episode?
That's all I got.